Mic check number 2. It's all about you. You. Only you.
Do I need to speak as well?
Oh, I need
Is
to
that
turn
part
up
of the mic
my,
check?
yeah, well, ideally. I mean, not that you say anything, ever.
I don't really have a lot to say. But when I do have something to say, it sounds like
It is
it's really
powerful.
interesting.
It
Yeah.
is very interesting and super powerful. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the channel. Do us a favor, please hit that like button, make a comment, and hit that subscribe button now. It really makes a big difference to the channel.
The comments are exactly what we need. Please drop us a comment, ask a question. We'll answer it on the show. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for joining us, Santo. This is great. I kind of gave you a little bit of a rundown on how today is super informal. We just like to chat about real estate. You know what you're talking about, so we like to talk to people like you. And if you don't mind, you mind giving just like a small little intro? I know you're working, like you're a team leader in Toronto, but just give a little bit of intro for some of our listeners.
Okay, so my name is Santo Sessa. I work with Remax Premier. I run my own team. It's a family team. My wife is a full-time realtor. I'm a full-time realtor. My son recently got his real estate license, and together we run Team Sessa.
I love it.
Awesome. Family
That to
team.
me is the best team.
How
Yeah,
old,
that's
how
the
old
best
is
team
your
to be on.
son?
My son is 27 now.
27, just got his real estate license, joining the family business. Nice, cool.
Beautiful.
How did he get it? Did he go through Humber?
No, but as this was in talks for a while, and as we found out that everything was switching over to Humber, then we kind of fast tracked the pre-Humber studies and courses and did it that way.
Right. Yeah, my daughter
Santo,
wants
you
to be a
forgot about the
realtor.
most important part, though, your YouTube channel.
My YouTube channel is doing awesome. It's so much fun. And I got it, a full disclosure, if it wasn't for my son, we'd never be doing what we're doing. I'm the data guy. I'm the one who presents it. If you saw my channel, I'm the one that puts data together. These are things I was normally doing working with my clients anyway. So I'd go to a listing presentation, or I'm talking to buyers at a buyer presentation, and I'd kind of give them a rundown of what's going on. So I would do these charts for myself, and then slowly put one on YouTube, then another one. But when my son kind of got more involved, and he does a lot of the behind the scenes, the marketing, the promotion, all the online stuff, all the videos. If it wasn't for him kind of organizing that, we'd never get it to where it is now. It's doing great. We've had a lot of success with it.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
we've
a
been
great
watching
channel.
you grow. I think I've been watching you for years. My wife also, she gets emails from you regularly. So she's always like,
She does.
she's always sending me emails from you, and I just told her, I was like, oh, he's coming on the show. It's great. We're getting huge over
fantastic.
here because we can get guys like Santo Sessa on the show
Oh,
now.
come on, man.
Right?
Come on.
There you go. Now
Your
we've made
show,
it.
See? We're
your
growing.
show's
made it.
doing great. Never mind.
We're happy. Yeah,
We're happy.
It's
We're
fun.
happy here. We like to talk about real estate. So just like you, we're just kind of doing what we would normally do together anyways on a regular basis.
Yeah.
You know, real estate is one of those things that everybody, everybody lives somewhere. Whether you're renting, whether you own, whether you're an investor, everybody loves talking about real estate. And no matter where I go, as soon as people find out you're in real estate, they ask questions. They want to talk. They might not have any intentions of buying or selling or doing, but they're curious about their house or the market or the neighborhood. And it's always on everybody's mind.
Yeah. Like, how often are you sitting in a restaurant and you're hearing the people next to you and they're talking about real estate, and then you look over there and they're talking about real estate and you're sitting there.
Exactly.
Multiple offers.
I'm always going to my wife. I mean, I guess it's been like a year and a half since we've been in a restaurant and done that. But before, we would always just sit there going, oh my God, it's so funny. Like everybody is always, somehow the conversation turns to real estate. I mean, I guess that must be forced by the fact that we're all so interested in real estate as well.
Well, for sure. And even if it's funny, you know, it's one of those, I guess, industries where everybody's an expert.
Yeah,
and
there are three.
Everybody
right
knows, and so, you know, in casual conversations, sometimes I just kind of stay a little bit quiet. I'm not gonna convince somebody if market's going up, market's going down. You know, it's one thing if they casually ask or they're genuinely interested in your opinion, but I just find, you know, even in my own family, it's we get together, and although it's been a while since we've gotten together, but it seems that everybody knows and they have strong opinions, and it's really interesting.
It's easy to have an opinion on real estate, right? Because like you said, we're all living in real estate. We all know about real estate, and there's no way to prove somebody's prediction to be wrong today. And even if someone says to me, oh, well, you know, this should have happened, there's always so many different factors that I can bring into the equation to say why it may or may not have happened. So there's really not a lot of wrong answers, right? So you have to really just be, you know, cognizant of that. And when, as professionals, and you know this, you know, there's only so much advice we can give to our clients. And as long as we take the worn path to make sure that they have the least amount of risk and errors and stuff like that along their journey, they turn out okay. But definitely.
Nothing drives me more crazy when we're talking real estate when somebody predicts the future with a certainty, like they know this is what's going to happen.
I am one
drives
of those.
Me mental.
I am one of those.
Don't watch any of our earlier episodes then.
I am absolutely certain I know without a shadow of a doubt that over the long term, the city of Toronto will go up in value. That I am confident in saying any day of the week, unless, of course, it doesn't.
Aliens come.
And that's exactly. And I'm with you there. When somebody says, you know, I'm thinking of buying, I'm scared of how the market's going to be, and I'm like, well, what you're buying, is it an investment? You're going to flip it next year? Or are you going to, I mean, is this long-term? You're going to live there 5 years, 7 years, 10 years? Like, what's the plan? Oh, no, this is my forever home. Or, oh yeah, I'm going to be there till at least my kids get out of school. I'll be there 10 years. My attitude is generally, don't worry about it then. You're good. You know, Over time, we're good. But if you tell me you're flipping it next year, that's a tough prediction to make.
Yeah. I mean, we're all experts, but none of us have a clue. That's the reality.
How do you feel right now, though, Santo? Because the only thing that we can do in real estate is we can tell people what's going on today.
Right now, with real people that are doing it in the streets.
This is what happened last week. This is what happened last year. This is what happened 10 years ago. Here's what's going on today. Yeah. Tomorrow, no idea. So what are you seeing today?
I'm 100% sure when I give my stats, those are the numbers because they've already happened. It's in the history books. I'm very confident about the numbers, but as soon as I go to tomorrow, I'm fairly confident over the next week, this is kind of where we're going to be. But beyond that, things can change so fast, and we've seen it before. Things change so fast, and you can analyze the numbers and the interest rates and how the price of eggs in Asia are going to affect our economy here. But what you can't predict is buyer or seller mentality. You can't predict the attitude on the street. Mm-hmm. If I would have stood on the rooftops when we went into our first lockdown last year, mid-March, and said, don't worry, in 4 to 6 weeks, prices are going through the roof. Yeah. You would have called the straitjackets, locked me up, and thought, And I never predicted that because I would have thought I was crazy. But look what happened. Like just opposite of what any high paid economist could have ever predicted. And like, how do you, it's
like
such
the most connected, well-informed, like closest to the fire economists predicted minus 18%, right?
right.
And the deferral cliff and like all this horrible shit. And what do we see?
Yeah. And they backed it up with things like the deferral cliff.
Right.
So
And they backed it up
it
with
made sense,
stats,
though.
and that's the best
it
thing.
made sense.
It made sense. It was like, yeah, when that changes, when that happens, when those people can't pay their bills anymore, this will happen. And you know what? If the way that everything always has to be positioned is if this happens, this will happen. If everybody loses their job and they can't afford their home anymore, they'll be forced to sell, and we'll have a flood of supply, and prices will go down. That's true. It's just, how is all that going to happen, right? And it's like, so it's easy to dictate what's going to happen if the government continues to prop up the economy, if they continue to leave interest rates low, if they offer incentives to business to stay open, and they try to make sure that everybody survives this pandemic and the recession and everything else like that, prices will continue to rise. Okay.
Makes sense. But playing devil's advocate here, just picking the other side, borders are going to open up also with everything that you're saying is going to happen. And we have an influx of immigration. So there's a whole bunch of examples saying prices are coming down, but there's a whole bunch of examples saying that in the near future, demand is going to go up with inflation, with universities back into, real live teachings and trainings and classes. And so there's the influx of foreign students, and foreign students, not just from overseas, but from other parts of Ontario, even, like coming in. And this whole talk about downtown is going to be a ghost town is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. And I don't care what anybody says, the bosses and the corporate heads know there is no way people are more productive at home.
Good.
There's no way.
Good.
So at some point, they're going to say, come back. Now, there's going to be some companies saying, you know what? Where people are probably, 75% as productive at home, but because we don't need 50,000 square foot in an office tower anymore, we're okay with the lower productivity because, one offsets the other. We're saving so much in downtown expenses, but there's going to be other companies coming in, dying to get into downtown Toronto. There's always a shortage of office space. And I don't know. Toronto downtown is going to be vibrant. It's going to be exciting. And there's going to be the people also looking for jobs that are starting to graduate. They're going to get into it. They're going to go downtown. It's Toronto strong.
Yeah, agreed.
I agree. And having said all that, if we look at last month, we slowed down a little bit, which is what everybody in the media was hoping for, looking for, calling for, and we got it. And so what do we think about this? I mean, you're the stats guy. You're the best stats guy I know in Toronto. Like, what do you think about this lull we have here in May? Is it the new trend? Is it the new direction? Are we going down, or are we just gonna? Is it just everybody's tired right now? Everybody's sick of this fucking real estate stuff.
You're almost, in my opinion, you're almost right on every point you made there. I chart things as you know on my YouTube channel week to week, and it's hard to make a trend. Excuse me. It's hard to talk about a trend when it's just week to week. So I need several weeks, a month to go by to say, hey, this is the direction. And March was our big month. We didn't know it in March. April traditionally should have been higher as far as average price and sales. It wasn't, but traditionally it is. And then May should have been higher still as we head into spring, but it wasn't. From March, we kind of went down. Now I'm saying down, but it's like minuscule, small percentage points. And it almost feels like we've kind of hit a plateau. And you're going to see in my newest report coming out Tuesday, things went up again. So months of inventory came down and sales have gone up, listings have gone up, and average price has gone up across Toronto. So you're going to see now from going to, but that's just 1 week.
Dip, yeah.
Yeah. So we've been taking a dip and now it's going to go up again. You know, why is this happening? Wow. I work with buyers and sellers every day. TK, you do as well. I mean, we hear so many things working with our clients and through talking to other realtors when we're talking about offers or when we're even just booking showings. Is there, our showings booked up? Because now, everything's half-hour showings. We used to them and stack them and let everybody see how many people are going to showings to create the enthusiasm. Now you got to spread them out.
But you wouldn't know exactly how many people are going. You just see business cards and stuff.
No, the more
now
the
with
merrier.
Broker Bay, but now with Broker Bay, you see it. You're like, there's only one spot available left to go. I see it right in front of me that person's got showings booked the next 3 days.
Do people take like fake like do they reserve times, like extra times on
no, because they're scarce. You can't afford to lose times. You have to keep them as many open as possible. You're convincing your clients not to let
buyer agents. Do they like reserve like 6 slots on good show?
No, they'll book 2 if they need to for whatever reason. But that's
it. See, here's where I have an advantage. I can book. My wife can book right after.
Right.
We can get people on
the whole afternoon, Team Sessa.
The whole team.
I blocked it off for the 3 days before offer date. No one else can get in.
That's a good idea, actually.
That's a good strategy, Darryl. Typical Darryl would come up with something like that,
I was part of the brain trust that came up with that.
Although, we're just innocent realtors over here until Darryl comes in and gives us all these ideas. I think it was
just my evil influence on Santo because he really came up with that. It just
people do all sorts of things. As far as where the market is right now, it seems we're kind of in a plateau. We've kind of, we had some big numbers out there, big average sold prices, really high. And we've been at it for like a year. And like, we've got no immigration. We've got really nobody really moving from out of province in. I mean, everything, the population has kind of been stagnant. There hasn't really been changes. Companies haven't been expanding. And so at some point you got to figure, no matter how many millions of people live in Toronto, that pool of aggressive buyers just ready to go. I mean, doesn't it kind of make sense that they're going to be exhausted? Like if you bought, you bought, unless you're an investor. If you bought, you bought. And we've been at this for a year of growth and multiple offers. It's kind of got to calm down at some point. But I say down, it doesn't mean down. It's just steady as she goes right now. You can't be at a full run constantly. At some point, you got to come down to a jog to, kind of get your breath a bit.
So what does that look like, though? What does that look like? Is that like more listings and the prices are going down and less sales? Like, what does that look like?
But this is what happened though, Darryl. So just to kind of answer your question too, is the buying cycle, right? So a buyer goes into the situation, they lose a few offers, and then they realize that prices have gone up. Then they try their best to get an offer and someone pays more. Then they pay way more than anybody else in the neighborhood has paid and still someone overbids them. So that emotion takes over and then they start becoming these incredibly aggressive buyers, which is what led us to the January, February, March issues, right? Where prices just climbed way too fast. The new buyers that are there right now, they haven't all been through that. You know, most of those guys gave up if they didn't buy. And the new ones that are just coming into the market now, there's been more inventory. There's, you know, the lockdowns have been maybe a little bit more relaxed. There's been different things that have changed that have made people get properties a little bit sooner. And so it doesn't mean that there's going to be prices going down. It doesn't mean like there's not going to be any more people listing their houses for sale. It just means the mentality of the buyers is a little bit different. It was a frenzy in March. It was a frenzy. People were desperate. They were paying crazy amounts of money more than they should in certain pockets of the city. And I've seen prices go down in certain areas where they were selling here in March and they're not selling there anymore, for sure.
Yep.
Now the buyers are more realistic and they're like less stressed. And they're kind of like, if I don't get this one, the next one will be mine.
But also we as realtors, you know, I've changed my whole buyer presentation. When I sit down with a buyer, we're getting ready to start. Okay, we're going to look for a house. I prepare them up front. Hey, listen, we might have to kind of, you know, try on a few homes before we get the right one. We're not going to go in and, you know, pay through the roof. I don't know about you, TK, but I've never been so lucky to be working with a buyer that's prepared to outbid everybody. Like I've never had a buyer that has said to me, I don't care what it costs, you got to get it.
Yeah.
But I've seen some prices on what some people have paid, and I'm thinking, wow. And when you're working with the buyer and you lose out a multiple offer, deep down, you kind of want the person who ended up buying, you want that price to be way beyond what your person was willing to pay anyways, because it hurts when it's just a few thousand more.
Do you know how many houses I sold to buyers between January and April 21st, 2017? Zero.
Yeah,
it wasn't, I couldn't do it, Darryl. The prices were going up so like nothing made sense. So I just kind of kept on telling people like, that's way more than it's worth. Like that's that's more than enough that you're putting in. But any more than that, it doesn't make sense. And we would lose over and over and over again. Right. So you're still paying top dollar, but you kept on losing. So I just kept giving people the advice, and eventually things cooled down, and there was lots of people that were really thankful because of that. So, and this year's been the same. Very, very few buyer deals in the first few months of the year. It's just a reality.
So the change now is you do your evaluation as a realtor. You figure, okay, based on that neighborhood, what's happened, you know, you look at all the comparables and say, this home, here's the price. And you kind of, you show your buyer client, you know, this is what's happening. Where do you want to, you know, what are you comfortable paying for this house? Also based on your budget. And back in March, it was going to go way up here. But now, even if it goes up, it's worth a shot now. Oh,
we got an article.
Well,
Darryl's bringing in the news here. He's bringing in the big guns.
Well,
okay.
Listen, there are, I mean, we're talking about our opinions now, and there's you know, there's stuff out there where, you know, obviously the stress test just started. I mean, are you guys seeing that have an effect on your buyers at all? Because didn't that just start like 6 days ago? I mean, I believe we saw, at least from the media standpoint, what I saw was that there was no run up to this being implemented, which I think which
is different.
Logically, you would think that there should have been a run up before the stress test came in, right?
And we saw that in the past.
Right.
So it only made sense. We didn't see that.
And we didn't see
this week or the week before, Broker Bay has got analytics and showings have been up since prior to June 1st. There has been an increase. Was that because of the stress test? You know, it's anybody's guess. But there has been effectively more buyers out there looking. But June 1st is now passed. Then there's also a bunch of confusion on who's actually going to be part of the old stress test and who's not, and who's actually got a pre-approval and who's maybe got it fully approved with the commitment. So I think it's more psychologically than mathematically.
And what about this?
And it's always in that the psychology behind it, and the buyer mentality or the seller mentality, that's what we can't quantify. We can figure out a whole bunch of other stuff, but how do buyers and sellers, what do they feel like now that we're loosening hopefully some of these lockdown restrictions? Are people thinking, great, I'm going to put my house up because I was uncomfortable before, am I going to list now? Or are they going to be preoccupied with, well, you know what, I'm going out to restaurants, I'm going to enjoy having people over, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and is real estate going to kind of take a back seat? It's so hard to predict, but once it happens, people come up with their reasons why. It's really hard to predict. But what you said about the stress test, we've always seen, almost always, before any kind of major change, a run up just before that. If they say, next month interest rates are going up a quarter point,
you better believe there's going to be a run up. Before that,
we see a run up.
What's that? For sure, there'll be a run up if interest rates are going up.
Well,
I mean, who knows for sure?
In theory.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
These are all the little nuances.
So we lost a bunch of jobs last month too. Do you think that factored into numbers coming down? I mean, I think 35,000 jobs lost in Ontario alone last month.
Yeah, it depends on which jobs.
We actually had a situation.
Same jobs, right? As before,
we had a real situation. So this is an actual situation where a client had purchased, between the time they sold their own property and purchased firm and everything else like that, they actually lost their job. Right? Which, I mean, this is not a common occurrence, right? Where that happens, right? I mean, most people you're going to buy, it's like, I know my job's going to be good for the next 5 years, and I know I've got security, and the bank, when they're approving you, it's based on, maybe it's a salary job, contracts, like all that kind of stuff. And this individual actually had lost their job. It wasn't my client, it was somebody else that on the team that they were telling me about. But that's something that's new that hasn't really been, the atmosphere for that. And the job market issue right now is, even though unemployment is really high, there's a ton of jobs for high skilled people, trades just being one of them, that are just not getting filled. Like it's crazy how much labor force we're lacking right now in Canada and all over the world for these high skilled jobs. And I think that's going to make an impact. For sure, not losing 35,000 jobs, because like Santo said, where are those jobs, and are they part of the lockdown, are they temporary losses, all that kind of stuff. But actually, in the long run, who's going to fill all these positions that we need?
Yeah, I think we're going to have a shortage there. But also, when I say which jobs, not to sound I don't know, mean about the whole thing, but are we losing jobs of people that were thinking or in a position to buy or sell, right? If are these lower paying jobs, are they higher paying jobs, and are these people that are looking to buy and sell? So
that pool is getting smaller every week in this city, right? As the prices just get further and further away from what people can actually afford. I mean, even though we're in a lull, did the prices go down? Did average price go down last month?
It went up again.
Yes, but
it did go down
slightly.
From which month?
The month before.
Well, from April to May, March, April, May.
With price
slightly.
Freehold.
Slightly. Right? Sales went down and average sold price went down. And I'm charting it on a weekly basis, and that's been happening also. However, this week coming, you're going to see when the Toronto report goes out on Tuesday, that for week ending June 2nd, that last week, average sold price went up. And sales went up, and listings are going up. So it'll be 1 week where it now goes the other way. It's not a trend, it's 1 week, but let's see what happens. Maybe that's a cause of the stress test. Who knows?
Everybody called their buyers and they were like, there's a dip, quick, get back in. The time is right.
Well, there's those people that it can never be low enough.
Yeah.
right? So they're always waiting for the lower. And there's some people that it can never be high enough. They're just never going to sell. It's got to go higher, higher, higher. And this whole conversation of, wow, there's people that, you know, it's just too high. We're priced out.
Where am I
Hasn't
going to
that
go? Doesn't that come up
But-
all the time with people
But hasn't
wanting to
that
sell?
conversation been, you know,
Forever.
for years? Like,
Yeah.
Is it not more
since
now?
I was a baby, you know?
It's not.
Yeah.
It isn't more now than it was before. Where am I going to
Well,
go?
I think
Because
There's
now
always
it's
a
not
neighborhood
like
that
but
everyone's priced out of.
no, but
there's
now
always a
it's not
neighborhood.
like moving to East York or moving to like Thornhill. It's like, we're gonna go to Barrie or we're gonna go to Durham or we're gonna go to Pickering. You're going much further now if you're gonna sell, or you're stepping it up a notch.
for sure you are.
Right? And a lot of people who are at the end of the line with their house and they're cashing out, it's like, I mean, unless you're going to rent, where the hell are you going to go to take that money off the table and still live in a nice place?
I've had several, we'll call it reality checks or come to Jesus conversations every year, but this year in particular, where it's the family home. They have a big, 3,200 square foot home that they've raised their family in. The kids are all out. It's just now mom and dad. They're much older, and they say, we want to downsize and we want a small 3-bedroom bungalow. But we don't want to do any work we don't want to go through that. So the bungalow has to be modern and new. And
we want to pay $500.
Yeah. And we want money for our retirement in the bank because, we want to travel. We want to do all these beautiful things. And when I price out what their home's going to sell at, now their home hasn't had any kind of updates for 20 years or 10 years. So even though they put a new kitchen 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it's not a new kitchen anymore.
To them it is.
And so I price their home, and then I price what they want to buy. And sometimes it's really close. That money that they're thinking, just where are they going to go? You're right. Sometimes, and these are the upfront.
Hamilton.
Yeah, but even then,
they want to stay in the same
Even
neighborhood.
then, it's too high.
Well, yeah, they want to stay in the same neighborhood to be close to their kids.
Yeah, they just want to go to a smaller house and they want lots of money. And to go from 3,200 square foot, 4 bedrooms, 4 baths, whatever, to 3 bedrooms, 3 baths, 1,200 square foot, and free up almost no equity whatsoever, that's a hard pill to swallow for anybody, right?
Yeah,
that's not easy. That's not an easy decision to make.
No,
You say,
so-
what?
But
I'm
you know
losing
what?
all this to go to that for nothing?
Right.
Yeah.
And the decision ends up being, you know what? This thing's paid off. It's worth this. Let's take some money out of the ATM, right? Let's just stay here because I don't know where else we're going to go. And let's leverage this thing a little bit for our retirement. Let the kids
Agreed.
deal with it later.
Not as common. You'd be surprised. Not
It's
as
going to
common.
be more common though. I'm telling you, because
Well, what I'm seeing more and more in one of my previous videos last week or the week before, there's 2 trends that I'm seeing more often than I have before. Like people always do similar things in real estate, but lately I'm seeing this even more. I'm seeing people selling, people who were planning to sell next year, selling now because they see that the market is high and they feel it'll be lower next year. And, everybody has their opinion there. So they feel the market next year will be lower. So they're selling now and renting. We're just going to kind of pause and wait and see. And when the market's lower next year, we're going to buy back in. That's one way to do it. I'm also seeing the trend more often than I've ever seen before, where the seller is listing the home, but in our brokerage remarks, realtor to realtor, there's a note saying seller selling, but wants to rent back the home for a year.
Yes, or longer, forever if they'll let them.
So the seller wants the cash, but doesn't want to give up the home. And and maybe there's an investor that will buy the home and rent it back to the same
That's a
people
tough-
who sold it.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I don't think we're
You
going to
need
see
a
a
lot
lot
of
of those
equity
deals
for that. Yeah.
in,
For that
in
to
most
work.
neighborhoods. There'd be very few neighborhoods that I think investors would be keen on something like that.
You could take back a second mortgage and make it a little bit more enticing for an investor. Like there's ways to make
Yeah,
that
I think
work if you
there's
want to.
A lot of
It
speculation.
depends on the home, though. People that are buying, generally, they want to live in it. They don't, want to. You gotta. I don't know. Especially if it's a nice place, it's not an investor type home.
Yeah.
No,
So
investors
somebody
want
wants
it
to
carry
buy,
itself.
say, look, if they want a long closing, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, maybe, but I don't want to rent it back.
It's a good business
Yeah.
model, though, if there's any need at all for that in a big city like Toronto. I mean, you got to have enough customers to be able to buy their houses and rent it back to them.
Yeah, again,
I'm seeing it more. People are
a lot of
asking
negative cash
for
flow
it.
there for investors to want to get involved with that.
Pass those
That's all
over to me,
speculation.
boys. Pass those over to me. If you ever hear that, anybody out
That
there
happens all
ever
the
hear
time.
that? Yeah, pass that over to me. I'll figure it out.
But they don't want to sell it for cheap. They want to sell it for the most amount of money,
Top dollar,
and they want to rent
pay
it back.
no rent. I get it. We'll work it out.
And they want to rent below market rent.
We're gonna work it out.
Yeah.
I'm here to help.
And their promises
I like
will
it.
take care of the home. We've lived here already for 10 years.
That's right.
Yeah.
Who's
Yeah.
gonna take care of the house better than us?
Right.
Ah, fuck it, Martha. We don't own this piece of shit anymore.
Yeah. So those are trends. I think, are we still seeing people wanting to get out of the city? I'm still seeing a large chunk of people who are willing to move outside of the city, and they're thinking about their options. They're trying to move near children who live outside the city. They're looking at vacation property areas that they always wanted to live in, freeing up equity so they go far enough, leaving the province. That's still a big trend. Is that still clients of yours are talking like that, or?
Toronto
I am
buyers.
seeing that.
We got an
am seeing
article
that.
here. Toronto buyers behind uptick in house prices across Ontario. So that's what you're talking about, right?
That's a big duh.
Yeah.
But that's what. Are you seeing that, Santo? Still, like people.
I am not so much for the reason that also the media talks about. I mean, early on, the whole conversation was you can work from home, so people are getting rid of their condos and smaller houses and moving out. I don't think that was the biggest reason. I think the biggest reason was because of interest rates dropping and being as low as they are, they have an opportunity now where they didn't before. So they were planning to buy in 2 or 3 years from now, and they've moved it up because interest rates are so low. They're putting pressure on themselves, knowing that this is the dip. We're at the bottom here when it comes to interest rates. It's only going up from here. So if there's a way for them to move it forward, and they're driving out until they can, home prices, mortgage, everything lines up. In the city of Toronto might not line up for them. In the closer areas, Mississauga, Vaughan, Richmond Hill, it might not line up. So they're going further out until they drive as far as they can get approved. And they're okay with that.
But
I think the interest rates is the biggest motivator.
But you also have people that are $750,000 to $1 million buyers in Toronto going out to places where the average price, a year ago was $500,000. Now all of a sudden it's like $750,000, right? And it's not locals doing it.
No. I bought for a buyer client. I bought a property in Cambridge. December, and it was aggressive. Like it was
Cambridge.
I had to roll up my sleeves and really the market was so aggressive. And they keep talking about Toronto, the big bad wolf. I was so happy to get that deal eventually done and say, like, man, it's way more fierce I found out there than it was over here.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So I think another thing that I've heard that you just reminded me of, and we're all doing the same thing right now too, and I'm hearing this from the small town realtors, is Toronto realtors have got more clients buying in the outskirts now more than ever, right? So
Yeah.
like we got a Barry board, we're members of the Barry board now because so we have access to all the boards in most of the boards in Ontario just because of all these changes that have been happening, right?
Yeah.
And when I go to these different places and stuff like that, it's 50% of the realtors going out there are Toronto realtors. So we've got partners all over. So different people are able to help me out when we go to different parts of Ontario and stuff. But it's a big change. Your landscape as a realtor has expanded. Where it used to be you
For
work
sure.
10 streets and you don't need to know about anything else. Now as a successful realtor in Ontario, you know, you're probably looking at about an hour outside the GTA in all directions. You need to know at least a little bit about, for sure.
For sure. And you know, with access to internet and other data, I mean, we see the data. We can figure things out, and there's so much collaboration also going on. But where we're seeing in these outskirts, prices coming up more aggressively than percentage-wise, more aggressively than they have in the GTA here, just because of the sheer size of these places. So, you know, we'll look at I use the example of Cambridge. We'll look at Cambridge. It's not that big of a place. All of a sudden, if all these Toronto buyers start looking at Cambridge, for example, or Kitchener or Waterloo or any of these other towns, or Georgetown, for example. I have a client, we were looking for something in Georgetown, and it's not that far away. There's virtually nothing for sale compared to the demand side. And these are small towns. So if they have 10, 20 listings in a neighborhood, that would be like a lot. But there's like 300 buyers from Toronto looking at that, and they just can't absorb that kind of a demand, and it shoots prices through the roof.
And then
the
everybody
biggest
goes,
number.
"Holy shit! Did you see what they
Yeah.
just sold
So
for?"
if builders
We're outta
wake
here.
up and say, "Oh my God, there's so much demand, we got to build," well, that project is 3-4 years down the line.
If you're
They
lucky,
just can't,
too, yeah, maybe a small
they
townhouse.
can't. Yeah. So
The biggest one I heard was Prince Edward County. You might have heard of more. 49% year over year
crazy.
price increase.
It's crazy. And that was always, a beautiful place to go camping or to have a cottage, and people are living there.
Yeah.
I think though, there's going to be, a lot of people are, with the attitude, I could work from home. The story's not over with this yet. I just don't.
Google Apple just announced, right? 3 days a week. They just announced it this week.
It's definitely 1,000,000,000% going to partial work from home for anybody that wants to do it, unless, the guys in the meat packing plant, they can't really work from home, right? But like anything else, we talk about it all the time. I do not have to leave my house for work at all. And I'm very deeply ingrained in a lot of real estate. I haven't had to
You're
leave the house.
self-employed though.
I get it.
But working for somebody else, it's a different story.
But I do a lot of stuff remote that most people do in their jobs as well. But it's a motivation thing. It's a organizational thing. Like, there's so many factors that go into it. But I think the reality is that a lot of companies will allow some form of work from home.
We'll see.
We'll definitely see. Now let me ask you guys both a question, actually, because I'm really into technology, and I believe that technology is going to help us kind of bridge the demand-supply gap at some point in time. We obviously can see that the two of you have adopted social media, which is a technology, through the pandemic. I think, Santo, you probably started a little bit before the pandemic, but you probably really ramped it up in the last year and a half. What other technologies have you guys adapted to or adopted in the last year, year and a half because of all these changes that the pandemic brought on?
Interesting question.
Broker Bay is one for me.
Well, but that was your brokerage.
Yeah.
Right.
But utilizing it,
That's
offer
a
nights,
forced
offer nights using Broker Bay to communicate. You know what I mean? Like,
what does Broker
there's
Bay
definitely
do?
The platform we use just for showing notifications and stuff. So typically offer date, everyone's coming to the house. You're calling everybody. You're negotiating with people face to face. You're going back, all that kind of stuff. Now you can send out like mass communications directly to all the agents, whoever registers the offers, have a real, I still call everybody because I'm just built that way. And that's just a way that I need to do it in order for me to have the success. But I can have other communications like, we've accepted an offer, thank you very much, all that kind of stuff, whatever, just different messages to communicate with people. Also registrations. So instead of telling everybody, okay, we have another registered offer, they're getting notified through Broker Bay. And we adapted that only a few months before the pandemic started. So that's been a really helpful tool.
Yeah. And so we're with showing time.
Yep.
But same thing. My comment to that was that's a brokerage. I mean, our brokerage jumped onto showing time kind of during the pandemic, and I've seen other brokerages use it, and I thought, why aren't we doing this? So we've been asking for it, and so now we're with showing time. And what's interesting, where I've seen a lot of this, either Broker Bay or showing time or any of this kind of software to organize showings and listings, and outside of the GTA, outside of the Toronto Real Estate Board, they're miles ahead of us when it comes to this. Miles ahead of us.
Smaller boards, easier to manage. Lock boxes, everything.
The lock boxes where, it's timed and you just put your phone in front of the lock box and it opens. And if you're early, it won't open. You kind of got to,
we use the master electronic lock boxes. We've been doing that for about 2 years, but we're one of the few Toronto people that do that. But you're right. Small towns make Toronto Real Estate Board, small town boards make the Toronto Real Estate Board look like amateur hour.
Yeah.
Trev's got too much political influence. And so everyone's got an opinion and no one wants to screw things up. And there's a lot of money at stake. And anyways, I don't want to trash Trev any more than I already do. So the other thing too is online bookings.
Yeah.
Santo, I remember when online bookings came out, I called Darryl every time I have to go and book a house, book a group of showings. Let's say there's 6 appointments. I'm calling a Remax, Century 21. This is who I am. This is where I got to go. And I'm calling every single time. Now I do everything online. And if a brokerage doesn't have online appointments, I'm like, oh, how come they aren't?
Like you don't want to show it.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, they don't have online appointments. Like I'm a snob now.
But that's actually good because do you know how many times? I mean, I guess you need a login to book those appointments, right? Because you
log into Treb.
Yeah.
And
like
TK,
I have so many times called up a listing and pretended like I was with Remax or Harvey Callis or whatever, and they just let you go. So, over time, some of them got a little more tight, and they knew what to
say.
ask.
It isn't so.
Sure, that's called trespassing, Darryl.
Yeah, listen, I've gone through Windows
or break and enter, one of the two.
Yeah.
Can we edit that out later?
No, look, I think.
Don't worry, Darryl's reputation on YouTube is in line with his actions.
That's right.
He's okay. Yeah.
TK, you're 100% right though. When Darryl asked the question, "What are you doing different? What have you adopted?" That book, and I was thinking, what am I doing different? So yeah, I'm social media more, but in particular, YouTube way more than before. But the booking online, I find myself, 11 o'clock at night, sometimes midnight, booking showings. I'll get a call from a client that, 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock, and they want to see something the next day. Normally I'd have to wait for the brokerage to open just to, to try to book, but not now. I do, I guess, 90% of my bookings online now. And it's so convenient. It's way better than before. Other things like electronic signatures, I've been using that for years. I was an early adopter on that. It made total sense. I don't have to at 11:30 at night fly across town because the offer expires at midnight and I need to get an like electronic signature. Immediately made sense to me. I've been doing that for years. But what I see now with that is other agents are on board with it way more than before. It used to be.
It was a struggle. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not everybody was. Now it seems to be.
Was it the
majority.
agents or the lawyers that were the problem before?
Well, what's funny is most lawyers haven't adapted it. But now some of the more savvy, quick to response, they've adopted electronic signature.
I remember at the beginning, like people would do it, but you'd still have to sign an actual copy like the next morning, like let's just get this in. But now it's like,
no,
who the hell
the
doesn't
real
use
estate
it?
real estate has been okay for a number of years.
So what else have
and
you
in the law
adopted?
society,
Secure.
I don't think they're allowed yet to do electronic signatures. What they're allowed to do is not witness their client in person. That was the issue. They had to be in front of the person, looking them face in the face and watch them sign. Now they can do it over video. And so they send a package, they sign it, you're doing a video call with them, and then you courier or send in the documents back again.
And you have to show your license or your passport on the
so
camera.
it's just you're doing it through video. And so what I was told is at the beginning of the pandemic, the lawyers reinterpreted what that act said. And they said, oh, you know what? I guess if it's done through video, that would be in person. And then they said, we're allowed to do this because they had to figure out a way how to start closing all these transactions who were sold January, February 2020 and needed to be closed March, April, May when everything was shut down. And then once they reinterpreted that became now the closing transaction centers and real estate lawyers.ca, like there's a lot of them that were doing things like this before, right? They were doing the video.
Even transferring the seller's cash at the end. You used to, they'd give a check. We used to pick up checks from the lawyer's office and take it to the brokerage. Now it's all electronic.
So here's another answer to Darryl's question. We're doing wire transfers and bank deposits. So I remember 2015, I had a TD Bank account for my old brokerage, and I'd give it to people and say, you don't need to come to my brokerage. We were at Woodbine and Danforth. We had another one at Yonge and Finch and Ossington and Bloor. So it was not that spread out. Like it wasn't like they were everywhere. So I said, instead of going to a brokerage, just go into the TD Bank, give them this account info, and you can just bring the deposit. And everyone was like, wow, that's amazing. I can't believe it. That's, but then some brokerages were like, I don't want to give my bank account information out. It's a trust account. Like they had all these issues. Now every brokerage has got the ability to do wire transfers and bank deposits.
Well, what was, we just got a deal accepted a few days ago. And the first time this has happened to me, we've done transfers for the deposit. When the agreement's accepted, you've got 24 hours to pay your deposit. We've done that through wire transfers. We've done it all sorts of different ways. But this one brokerage wanted us to take a bank draft to their bank.
Yeah.
And we've done it where, my buyer client will transfer. I give him the details of the trust account, and that's just a wire transfer directly in. But this was the first time where I was told your client should make a bank draft, but that bank draft, you take it to one of our banks.
I prefer it that way. And the reason I do it that way is because the wire transfer takes a few days sometimes to confirm. Our brokerage is very slow confirming the wire transfers. So what I'm getting is I got the property price low. I got 20 offers. I have people calling me 4 times a day for the next 3 days saying, did it sell? Did it sell? Did it sell? So I start putting sold firm awaiting deposit in the brokerage remarks. But when you bring in a deposit check and you send me a copy of the check, and then you bring it to the TD Bank and you send me a copy of the receipt, my brokerage can confirm the deposit a lot sooner. And that's so we do it every way. So it's not like you only can do it that way, but that was when agents say to me they want to do a wire, I say, if you can bring a draft into the bank, I'd prefer it that way. I said, do it any way you want. At the end of the day, it's all okay. Yeah.
As long as the money gets in there,
as long as the money gets there, I'm okay. I haven't had any deposits not brought in. Have you this year? Has anybody not brought in the deposit on a firm deal?
No, I have had a situation where for one particular client, he's much older in age and very, very serious about the pandemic, and only deals with one person at his bank. He calls his person at the bank, has an office. And so my client goes and meets that person, does all his banking in a private office. And so he needs an appointment. So we bought a home, and he called the next day, and that person wasn't working that day. And my client just refuses to stand in line at the bank and wait and go to a teller where everyone else. So it was the next day. So that's the only issue I've had because of the pandemic, because of the lockdown, because of the I guess justified paranoia that my client has. We couldn't do it the same day. The other side understood. I explained it to them. They understood.
That must have been a fun explanation.
Well, it started off with, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I go, no, really. Yeah, sure. No,
Your car broke
really.
down. Yeah.
So, but
there's different circumstances. Every once in a while, something will like that'll happen, right? Like when you're on the weekends, you do a deal on a Saturday.
Sure.
You know, they don't bank with TD, or one of the banks open on Sunday, so they got to come Monday. Like there's things that happen that takes a little.
Yeah, and that one's still to interpretation. 24 hours is really 24 hours the next day. But some people will just automatically assume, well, it's not on a weekend, no. 24 hours the next business day, and it's not true for the deposit.
Yeah.
And then there's the what's the online bank?
Tangerine.
Tangerine. Thank you.
Yeah.
Tangerine. If you bank with Tangerine, you're not getting a bank draft the next day. You're just not. And we know this now, but early on, any of the buyers, they get stuck. You can't just get a bank draft from Tangerine right away.
No, and the banks are always trying to make it harder for us to get our money out of them anyways, right? Like there's been a constant struggle in my entire adult life to get my money out of the bank when I want to. Right?
They're figuring out
they want you to get
ways
a mortgage from them.
Well,
to get it.
Well, they just want to hang on to it a little bit longer.
Their business model is to get it and earn with it, not to give it back.
That's right. It's like an insurance company.
So we're coming up to the end. So I kind of want to hear from Santo. The 2021, we're not holding it, hold you for anything that you say. We're not going to put this on YouTube and put this on the internet or anything like that. But we just want to know what's going to happen this year. Where do you see the market going? And what are you telling some of your clients in order to be able to help them make decisions for the rest of the year?
Okay. So if they're buying and it's a home they're going to be at for a long time, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, it's better that we find the home that they love versus trying to time the market, because that's a fool's game, trying to time the market. So not to worry if they buy something now and in 3 months it's 20, 30, 50,000 less. It won't matter in the long run. So it's better to find the house that they want. As far as competing, my attitude is, and competing in multiple offers, my attitude is we've got your budget. We're going to throw our hat in the ring, but we're not going to buy at all costs. So we should try, because we're seeing a lot of them not working out like they were before. So we should just try. But knowing that, hey, we might not get it. That's kind of my attitude. If somebody's saying, Santo, I want to buy, I want to update, I want to flip, that's a tough one. It's really hard to, just because we don't have the longevity of being in the market. So I'll say, if that's the game you want to play, that's fine. But you kind of got to be in a position where when we're ready to sell in, say, a year from now, after you've done all your rentals and everything, in 6 months or a year, you're ready to sell. If the profit margin isn't there, if prices are not where they need to be, are you in a position to hold on to it until prices are? Maybe rent it out for a year, for example. So I prepare them for that up front, and then we can go shopping and look, knowing, hey, I'm going to renovate, I'm going to invest. But if prices aren't where they need to be, you know what? I'm just going to rent it for a year or two. So they got to be able to play that game. Otherwise, they're taking a big chance, I think. As far as where I think prices are going to be, I think they're going to hold steady for the summer. They're going to go up and down a little bit, but they're kind of going to be where they are now for the summer. I expect a strong fall. I expect a second spring in the fall. That's kind of my attitude there, but we'll see.
Beautiful. And then a little shameless plug. Where can people find you?
You could find us anywhere. Looking Team Sessa Real Estate. We pop up everywhere online. You go to YouTube, look up Team Sessa Real Estate. We got Facebook, social media. We're everywhere there. Santo@teamsessa.ca is my email. 647-298-5491 is my cell. You could reach me anytime. I answer my phone. The only time I don't is if I'm physically with a client or shooting awesome video like this with you guys. Great. But otherwise, I call back right away.
Awesome. Yeah. And if anybody's looking for stats, don't watch our stat show first. Watch Santos.
That's
right. It's much better. And then watch ours afterwards.
Although if you watch ours first, it will be corrected if you watch Santos after ours.
Yeah, you'll find the real answers after you watch his.
Now let's just...
I don't know. You guys do a great job. Never mind.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Now, one last thing. I think the most important question that should be on everybody's mind, the most fascinating headline that I found this week is... Toronto 2051. Will we have flying cars before we figure out housing?
I think we will.
What
I
are you
think
yes.
we will. But we need flying houses so the cars can park. The flying cars can park in the garage.
Maybe that's the answer. Flying
That's the
houses.
answer. We got to go to flying houses first.
You just created 100% more real estate in the city of Toronto.
Location.
Let's get
right?
the air rights on the whole city. Let's do this.
I'm the idea man. There you go.
That was beautiful. Yeah.
Right. So forget robots.
Awesome.
We're just going to build houses on top of things.
Yeah. Perfect.
Or,
Mobile homes.
Or with these flying cars, you need one of those. I mean, everyone's got to learn to parachute down to their house. That's complicated, no?
That's a little trickier. I think it's a lot easier to build floating houses.
There'll be some people who physically may not be able to make it, so we have to be inclusive.
Awesome. Well,
you know, we're laughing about it, but
eventually
nobody would have thought a few years ago the Teslas and the autonomous car, like that's around the corner.
It's coming.
Who would have thought about that?
Oh, it's coming. And those flying cars are coming too. Like they're building buildings with pads on top for like these Uber drone cars. Have you seen these things?
I have not.
I've seen the single person drone drop off.
They're doing air taxis. Like these things are actually happening. Not only Uber, but these things are happening, and people are building like helipads on top of buildings in Miami, like because these are coming.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. This
traffic.
is the craziest time, I think, in human history for technology. Like we have so many new crazy technologies coming all at the same time. And listen, I got to say, just before we wrap things up, that the amount of technology that the real estate market has adopted in the last ever is quite pathetic. And the amount of things that you guys have adopted in the last year, I mean, like a scheduling software and going on YouTube, that's crazy. Like there's so many things out there that the industry just doesn't absorb. It's not you guys. It's like
I'm paperless now.
Yeah. And still, like, paperless now is 20 years behind most industries, right?
Yeah. I am paperless, and whatever I have on my laptop, I take notes on my iPad. It's on my cell phone.
And you're like cutting edge. You are probably at the cutting edge in real estate, like technology.
For sure.
Right? Most of the realtors can barely use their phones, let alone.
I have to be. I can't remember stuff.
Sure.
I can't remember everything, every conversation.
No.
And somebody will call me, we spoke 6 months ago, and they'll remember every word of my conversation with them. And so I write everything down and I could pull it up immediately.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of room for some crazy technology to pierce the real estate market and make a huge difference for you guys. Because you guys, I
agree.
Yeah, I mean, you still work hard. And what happens is you take on this technology, it frees up time, and then you just work more.
Exactly.
Right? That's
Help
why
more
you
people.
guys are
That's
top agents. That was a great conversation. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Santo.
I appreciate
That was really good.
Guys, thanks for having me. It was fun. Thank you.
That was so great.